Every fall, I bring my food dryer up from storage in the basement and dry apples. In German, those apples might be called Äpfelschnitz. In English, probably just dried apples. 40 years ago, I saw a plan for a homemade food dryer and built this one. As you can see, the drying fruit sits on these stainless steel screen trays. The heat source consists of old world 60-watt light bulbs, 4 of them. And since you can't buy these anymore, I've collected some to last me into the future. The wooden dryer box does the drying by natural convection. There's no fan. Air is pulled in below the trays and exhausted out the top. To peel, core, and slice the apples in one operation, I use this Pampered Chef apple peeler slicer corer. To set up for a batch of apples, I wash them, remove the stems, set up the machine, make sure that I have the trays and a knife handy, and then I set a scrap bucket under the whole operation. With good apples, I can set up, process enough apples for all 7 trays, and clean up in just over an hour. With firm apples, you'll move fast and have the fewest problems. We get seconds when they're nice enough, but if you have to cut out bad spots, it really does interfere with the peeling process. So the nicer the apples, the better. As each tray is done, I load it into the dryer. Also, once the apples are in, I generally turn off our overhead fans to stop any interference with the dryer's internal air convection. The house always smells great while we're drying apples. Cleanup involves washing and rinsing the machine, thoroughly cleaning the counter and the floor of sticky apple juice, and taking the scrap bucket out. So every 8 hours or so, I then rotate the trays. Each batch of apples dry for at least 24 hours and up to 48 hours. The 24-hour batches are chewy, the 48-hour batches are crispy. I've generally used Golden Delicious apples, but also really like the Fuji apples we tried for the first time last year. I would think any variety would do good well, but I tend to like sweet rather than tart apples. I've also played with sprinkling a bit of cinnamon onto the drying apples, but prefer them just plain. I've also tried some miscellaneous other fruit, but mostly dried just apples. Last year I actually dried 4 bushels of apples, and of course the dried apples weigh just a fraction of their original weight. So when a batch is done, I put them into a covered stainless bowl for several hours to cool and to equalize moisture. I can then put them into a sealed container for snacking, or, as I usually do with most of any particular batch, double bag and put them into the freezer. Being dry, I really doubt they need to be frozen, but that's what we've always done. And I really don't know how long they'd remain good in the freezer, because they're always gone by the end of January. We eat them and give them away as presents. People really love dried apples. They're really good tasting, and they're good for you. They do look a bit unglamorous. My 3-year-old grandson was quite suspicious of how they looked and didn't want to eat any until I teased him that they were dried worms. Then he gave them a try and has been a great fan ever since.
More worms.
What will you do if we get more worms?
I will eat them all up.
Oh.
So there you have it, folks. Now you know why I really do dried apples.